Hey everybody, it's Grandmaster Ben Feingold here with our series Great Players of the Past. Today we're doing the Austrian Grandmaster Karl Robatsch. Although I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his name, that's probably close enough. Let me see, Karl, yeah, that's it. Okay, he was born in 1929 and he died in 2000. And he played in several Olympiads. So even though it's possible he wasn't the strongest Austrian player of all time, he's still the greatest Austrian player of all time. Probably the strongest too. The reason he's the greatest is he played in every Olympiad and he played board one for Austria over like a 25-year period. So even if somebody later became a better player than him, that's nobody's done that. And he has opening variation named after him. And he became a grandmaster in 1961. In one of the Olympiads in 1960, which you can see from his Wikipedia, I'm gonna highlight it. He got 84.4% on board one and won the gold medal. So that's pretty good because he was only an IM. He wasn't a GM yet. That's crazy to get 84% on board one. And there's a picture of him in 61 when that was the year he was granted the Grandmaster title, or he earned it, I should say. He's played in many zonal tournaments, qualifying for interzonals, and he's played many world champions and many of the strongest grandmasters ever, including Portish and Larson, of people who weren't grandmasters. If you played G6, Bishop, G7 on the first two moves with black, that's some of that's named after him. Sometimes the Pirc is called the Pirc-Robatsch defense. I've seen that. I don't think his Wikipedia does him justice. I think he was a stronger player than his Wikipedia indicates, because usually the longer your article, the better you are. Now, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Martin Xanthos. And Martin is an unusual sponsor. Well, first of all, he's watching live, so I won't say the stuff I was going to say about him if I didn't, now that I know. But he's an unusual sponsor because what he does for a living is something that Robatsch was also interested in just as much as he was interested in chess. And that's actually why he's sponsoring the lecture. Not only does Martin, our sponsor, like chess, but he's a professional botanist, and Karl Robatsch was an amateur/professional botanist also. I'm not sure if he made more money from botany or chess. I'm going to guess chess, but what do I know? And some of this stuff on Wikipedia is like, he was also a botanist. That's the depth of Wikipedia's, yeah. And they talk about it very little. And they say he would have been a better chess player if he wasn't a botanist too. It said he was awarded the title of professor for his outstanding research in the classification of different species and subspecies of orchid. Of course, that's not giving me the information I want. Who gave him the title of professor? So here's some facts from our sponsor. His botanical specialism was orchids of the Mediterranean, in particular the orchid group Epipactis, in which he published many new species. And most of his stuff was his work from botanism was published in the 80s and 90s, probably when his chess career was winding down. And he has a lot of articles in obscure German journals, and it's not clear that he was affiliated with an institution or he just did it all on his own. And it's hard to find the information from, Austrian botanists from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. So the truth hurts. But it's interesting to find out that some grandmasters, I almost want to say many grandmasters, have interest in other fields where they have achieved a lot of acumen, where they're pretty good at the other fields too. And the most notable one, I guess, obviously Emanuel Lasker was a great mathematician, a friend of Einstein, But even more notable, in my opinion doesn't matter, but I'm doing the lecture, so yeah, that's too bad, is John Nunn. John Nunn is one of the smartest guys in the world, and he happened to be a top 10 chess player. And Garry Kasparov said, John Nunn could never become world champion because he was too intelligent. So Nunn couldn't spend 100% of his time on chess because Nunn was interested in mathematics and astronomy and photography and other things where he's really good. He graduated from, I think it was Oxford or was it Cambridge? It's one of them. He got a PhD in math when he was 19, and he got his bachelor's when he was 15 or something. So, I mean, John Nunn is a smart guy, and a lot of grandmasters also have master's degrees or PhDs. There's a few who are actually medical doctors, not many. There's 3 that I know of who are doctors and medical doctors and grandmasters. And some of them did things outside of chess that are very noteworthy. So Robatsch was a fantastic botanist, specializing in orchids, and that's what he liked to do. And he wasn't dabbling in it. He was really good. So I know him for being one of the top Austrian players for 40 years, and I know him for the Perez Robatsch defense. And as Mipek said, one of our live viewers, he hadn't heard of him before, and he's one of the lesser known, very strong GMs, which happens when you're from Austria. And if Mipek was here, and he is, and I asked him, could you name lots of Austrian GMs? He would go hamana, 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 hamana. Because the Austrian GMs usually aren't the most famous, but Austrian GMs and IMs do play in the Olympiad every year, and they do okay. They're not a bad team, Austria. Okay, let's look at the games, because the games are really interesting. There's 3 games where he smoked his opponents with tactics. Then there's one game where he smoked his opponents strategically, where I think the guy was embarrassed because it was so bad. Like he was getting positionally crushed so badly, it didn't look like he was a good player. And it seems like it used to be hard to share, and now it automatically goes, like I don't have to do anything anymore. So you guys can see the chessboard, right? Yeah, okay. So this is Robatsch versus Vlastimil Jansa, and I have a good Vlastimil Jansa story. I'm the only person in the world who has a good Vlastimil Jansa story. Vlastimil Jansa, I knew in Europe when I lived in Belgium, and we were actually at a tournament together, and 4 of us, or 3 of us, 4 of us? I want to say 4 of us decided to play miniature golf, and he was making fun of Epischen along with Golden, which is pretty funny. But my favorite Jansa story is Jansa was playing in a tournament where people were trying to get grandmaster norms, and Jansa was a grandmaster, so he didn't care. And one guy needed to get 1.5 out of 2 in the last 2 rounds to get the grandmaster norm. And with 2 games left, he went up to Jansa and he said, hey, would you like a draw in the last round? And Jansa says, oh, I think you've made a mistake. You need 1.5 out of 2, so you better see how you do in the penultimate round before we agree to a draw. And the guy said, oh no, don't worry about that. And that was code for, I've already paid the guy to lose. So he already had his penultimate game wrapped up. And then, so Jansa got really mad for several reasons. One is the guy's cheating. And the other is he asked that guy to lose and not Jansa. And he's probably paying the other guy more. And also it's cheating. So Jansa said, I will never ever give you a draw because of what happened. And they played a 100-move game where the guy held a bishop ending of opposite color down 2 pawns and he actually drew. So the guy actually got his fake, GM norm. But I like the way Jansa said, I'll never ever give you a draw. And he made that guy suffer, but the guy drew anyway, because, can't win by force, I guess. So Jansa has black against Robatsch, and Jansa's a Czech grandmaster. He was a grandmaster for, 50 years. So Jansa was one of the best players in the Czech Republic for quite a long time. And come on, Arrow. Okay, Robatsch played c4. and Jansa played the Dutch. And they played, I would say, a very staid, calm, boring, solid English, because White fianchettoed all of his bishops. He only had 2 of them, so he fianchettoed them both. And usually when White does that, he's not playing for like mate and 10 moves. He's playing for some positional advantage because this bishop on c8 isn't very good. And so Robatsch just saying like, my pieces are better. Okay, d6, d4. So we have a typical Leningrad Dutch. You can play c6, you can play queen e8, you can play knight c6. He played c6. He played king h8, getting his king off of this diagonal, which I think is just a wasted move. I'm not a fan of king h8. Robatsch played d5. And now the game suddenly ended because Robatsch thought they were playing Connect 4. It's not even clear if that game had been invented yet, but Robatsch, he was a pioneer. And it turned out they were playing chess, so the game continued. Queen a5, knight c3. Now, this position has probably occurred many times in Grandmaster play, possibly with the king on g8 and Black's playing some developing move. And here Black made the losing move. It's hard to make the losing move here. Meepex doesn't believe it. Okay, but Jansa played for tricks, not realizing tricks are for kids. And when I used to teach a lot of private students, I would explain this to them, and then they didn't listen, and then we had good examples for you guys. So as long as nobody listens, we can show you dozens and dozens of tactical issues. In this position, Black played a move which loses, and because he didn't see the winning move for White. And if it doesn't lose, it just wins material. And that means Black should have been suspicious. Lower rated players, when you play other lower rated players and they blunder, you guys are like, oh boy, and you play the winning move and it wins. And then you win, and then you're happy. However, when 2 very strong players are playing each other and player A thinks player B blundered, what player A should do is say, wait a minute, player B is a pretty good player. What am I missing? And then try to figure out why they blundered. And my favorite examples are every single time I play Ray Robson. Every time I've played Ray Robson, I've played him a lot, he always makes a move I think he can't do. He makes a move and I'm like, he can't do that. I already knew he couldn't do that. And then I'm like, well, he's Ray Robson, so I guess he can do it. And I look, and then I figure out why he can do it. And actually, the one time I didn't do that, I got checkmated. There was one time where I thought he blundered. I couldn't figure out why. And I made the move, and then he checkmated me like forced mate. Okay. And so that's what Jansa did in this position. It's not only a tactical mistake, it's a brilliant tactical mistake, but it's a psychological mistake because you assume your opponent made a bad move, and you shouldn't assume that when you're playing a guy I'm lecturing about, right? The guy probably had flowers at the side of the table. I don't know. So he played, now this will shock the live viewers, so hopefully you guys are calm. Knight takes d5. Confusing the live audience and those of you on YouTube. Notice the discovered attack on the knight. So knight takes d5. Unfortunately, it loses immediately. But if it didn't, it would win a pawn. And Black wins a pawn. So when White played knight c3, Jansa should have said, why is my opponent allowing knight takes d5 winning a pawn? What does he see that I don't? Now maybe he did do that, and he just wasn't good enough to see White's move. But I doubt it. Jansa is good enough to see. So White took the knight, and Black took the knight. And this was the first time anybody ever said, and you will know my name is the Lord. This is way before Samuel Jackson said it. Okay, White played a move, and Black can resign. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's 2 moves that win. They're the same move. There's 2 ways to win for White, but it's the same trick. It's a trick, but it's the same trick. Meepex looks confused. Okay, and then when I show him this move, he's going to be more confused for like a second. Then he's going to go, oh. And that move, hopefully you found it on your YouTube, is queen d2. Oops. Now the bishop is pinned both ways. If you take the queen, that's illegal, so I can't take the queen. Maybe he shouldn't have played king h8. And if you take the bishop, I take your queen. And when I said there's two ways to win, I could be wrong. I don't see what's wrong with queen e1. That looks even cooler. It's same trick. Okay, so queen d2 was played. Now if he resigned, he would look bad. So he played queen takes d5 and decided to play a piece down. Now the gawking rabble on the internet, one of them said, because he commented on the game, he said, you should always trade when you're ahead. So if I was white, I would play queen takes queen. And then here, and I would hope to win the endgame. Okay? Now, anybody who's been my student or listened to my lectures knows you don't trade when you're ahead, you trade when it's favorable. And if I ask you which king is safer, it doesn't matter how good you are at chess, the white's king is safer. And when your king is safer, you don't trade queens. So instead of winning an endgame in 35 moves, Robatsch won in 2 moves. He played queen takes c3 check. You can't play king g8 because queen g7 mate. So he played e5. And then Robatsch said, I got another tactic for you. And he played knight takes e5. Damn, 2 tactics in 1 game. Now the bishop, the latent potential of the bishop has been explained. And if you take with the queen, then I can move my queen anywhere defending my bishop. c2, c1, d2, whatever you like, and you lose your queen. Queen's pinned to the king. So after knight takes e5, Jansa resigned. And I'm guessing, I can't prove it, I'm guessing Jansa as a grandmaster, that's the shortest game he's ever lost. And it's pretty embarrassing. If you look at the final position, you don't guess that black is a grandmaster. You guess that black's a beginner. He's moved his queen. He hasn't moved his queenside pieces. He's lost a lot of material. He fell for 2 tactics. And Robatsch, even though a lot of people haven't heard of him, he beat a lot of very strong grandmasters, and usually he beat them tactically, as you will see from future games. Okay, that was the end of that game. And then next game is against Francisco Perez. And this was played in the 60s. And what's funny is black played like the Pierce Robatsch, sort of against Robatsch. Now Robatsch is from Austria, and I'm sure Mepex knows what the Austrian attack is against the Pierce. Yeah, he's thinking about it. Okay, the Austrian attack is when you play f4. And Fischer played this a lot, and this is played today. And he was Austrian, so it makes sense. Okay, knight f3. White has a big center. Black played bishop g4. Black can also play c5. Both moves are played today. Bishop g4 still played. h3. Black gives up the 2 bishops, and he plays e5. He wants white to take twice and mess up his pawn structure. So he takes once and plays f5. Another way to play is to take with the f pawn and then play d5. You can play either way. But he played this way. And bishop pins the knight attacks the queen. Now, you would like to play queen h4, and some of my students would, but it's illegal. Queens don't move like that. So he played queen f2, and he'll go to h4 next move. Give him a chance. Okay, queen h4. You can't play h6 because it's attacked. So he attacks on the queen side. He unpins his knight, and Robatsch just simply doubles on the f file. All of white's pieces are perfect. He plays gf. That's a very bad move. But to be perfectly honest with you, black's position looks just pathetic. I'm threatening to take on g6 and your knight's hanging on f6. White has 4 pieces on it. So I don't know what to tell you, but G takes F I think is a bad move. Takes back. Now white wants to play knight e4, but if you play e4, I'll play knight e4 anyway, because the queen on h4 defends e4. So he played b4. I played knight e4 like he wanted. Knight takes e4. And now I will confuse Mepex even more. I'm not going to confuse our sponsor. He paid good money for this lecture. I'm going to ask Mepex, do you take on the knight with the queen or the bishop? And I'll give you 2 guesses. He can't figure. I'm giving you 2 guesses.
I want to say neither, but
Neither is correct. You solved it. Can you imagine white not taking the knight? Okay, but I'm not lecturing on like some botanist. This guy's a chess grandmaster. Oh wait, he's a botanist too.
f6 looks pretty good.
F6 looks pretty good. It looks so good that black resigned. But we need to analyze some variations because there's like 6 variations and they all lose. So the resignation was correct. Okay, if it's white's move, white takes this and takes on e4 and he's a piece up. If you play bishop takes, I take, and I'm threatening queen takes h7 mate because I've unleashed my bishop. The only way to stop it that I see is e4, and now I can win by taking the pawn or the bishop. I don't see why it matters. I guess I'll take the pawn. Then you have to play rook takes e4 if you don't want to get mated. And white is up the exchange for nothing and has a big attack. So this is completely winning. Okay, you could play bishop h8, and then after bishop takes knight, you can't stop queen h7 mate. If you don't like queen h7 mate, sometimes you don't like things, I don't know. You could play bishop h7 mate. There you go. You have 2 mates, 1 for each of you. Okay, so you can't play knight f6, you can't play bishop h8, you can't allow pawn takes bishop. If you take with the bishop, and I take, now your knight is attacked twice. If it moves anywhere but knight takes bishop or knight g5, Jesus, then queen takes h7's mate. Knight g5, worst move ever. And if you take with the knight, rook takes, and you'll notice the queen is attacked, and checkmate is a threat. By the way, if the queen wasn't attacked, it's still hard to stop checkmate. But with the queen attacked, that makes it extra good. Okay, now there's a couple things we can take. We can take the bishop, that stops mate, because the knight defends the mate. Queen takes. Now, the only move that makes any sense to me is knight e6. Okay, then every move wins, but I'm guessing queen h5 is pretty good, and queen f5 and queen h4. They all seem equally good to me. Threatening, bishop h7 mate and queen f. You could play h6 there, so let's go queen f5. Let's keep it simple. Now if you play knight g5, I take, threatening queen g7 mate. And if you play e4, I take, and then that didn't help. Okay, you could also take the rook. If you take the rook, then checkmate. So even though black is a piece up, and black can take this, this, or this, 3 things he can take, well, you can take that, they all lose immediately. So after f6, black resigned. I'm sure black wasn't expecting f6. But the funny part of this game to me, like if my student was black and I was teaching chess still, I would tell my student, white's going to play knight e4 soon, so you played b4 forcing it. That'll show him. And he just assumed white would take back, then black could play f6, blocking the pawn, and white's attack is sort of stymied. But yeah, f6. For a similar move of f6, just like this, there's a game Fischer versus Benko, where I think it's rook f6. But I think Fischer played f6 2-1, but rook f6 had the same idea. We block the f pawn, we open up the diagonal, and we mate the guy. So this idea has been seen, but this was first, because this game was a long time ago. And after f6, even though black is a piece up, Black has to resign. White's threatening to take the bishop. White's threatening to take the knight on e4 with the queen or the bishop, threatening queen h7 mate. And all of White's pieces are perfect. You couldn't put White's pieces on better squares. Everything doing just what it's supposed to do. Go Robatsch. Okay. Next game is dear to my heart because he played somebody that I've played. Okay, and that's saying something. This was played in the 1990s. This is against Gerald Hertneck. I played Gerald Hertneck around 1990 in the Bundesliga. This was played in the Austrian Bundesliga, but I played Hertneck in the German Bundesliga. And I drew with Hertneck. We played like 18 moves of theory that I had known in a Slav, and eventually the game was drawn. That game actually was important for theory then, at that time. But I'm no Karl Robatsch. I know nothing about orchids. I got nothing, right? And I saw the movie adaptation, but it didn't help me. So, okay. So he played knight f3. Robatsch plays whatever move he wants on move 1. Black played a line that I used to play. I used to play this with black. Queen b6, c5, queen c7. Now this next tactical move is a book move, so it's not like, he's a genius or anything. Bishop f4. That idea has been played many times. If you take the bishop, I take on b7 and win your rook. So he played queen c8. And I like this game starting from this position. Okay, in this position, the next 100 moves, White makes a threat. Usually, you don't make a threat every move. But Robatsch made a threat every move. Threatens the b pawn, threatens the queen again. After queen c8, he plays knight h4 to take the bishop. He takes the bishop, plays e4, attacking in the center. And every move he makes is a threat or a capture. Capture. Now here, black made I would call it a mistake. I'm sure that he saw what would happen and he didn't think it was bad. So I think he should take with the e pawn. But White's better. White has more space than two bishops. He took with the c pawn, and I told you every move was a threat or a capture. He captures the knight, so he can play bishop b5 check and make the king move, as in the game Carlsen-Feingold, your favorite game. That didn't work out well for me. Check, king d8. Now White wants to castle. If he castles kingside, he gets mated in one move. So chess is a tough game. You're attacking, the guy moves his king in the opening, the guy's pieces are all in the first rank, and then he checkmates you. That's harsh. So he played g3, then he castled, b6, he's trying to get rid of that c pawn, rook e1, and rook e1 has a threat, and you should see the threat because White played rook e1. If it was White's turn to move, the game ends immediately. Right, Meepex? You agree? What's that?
Rook takes e6.
No. You're close. You're one square away. White's threatening queen takes d5 check.
Oh, and then rook, yeah.
And then rook to the back rank mate. Now Hertneck, grandmaster, so he plays bishop e7. Now you're not going to play rook e8 mate because you can't jump over the bishop. And the rook defends e8. Man, what a strong player. Rook e5. Now he's threatening rook takes d5 check and queen takes d5 and win the rook in the corner. So he played rook h5. Now if you play rook takes d5, I can take it. Okay. Queen f3, threatening the f7 pawn. And here black forgot everything. He said, je regrette, mais je forget. So I think, I'm not sure, if you take this, I can play this Zwischenzug, threatening queen e8 mate. Also queen g8 leads to mate. That's not easy to stop. And then if you stop it somehow, I'm not sure how, I guess king c8 stops it, maybe. Then I could just take the rook and then your king side collapses. Well, Hertneck didn't want to lose his f-pawn, so he defended it in breakneck speed. Or was it Hertneck speed? He played the blunder, bishop f6, attacking the rook and stopping queen takes f7, a multi-purpose move. Remember that threat we had 2 moves ago? Black somehow moved his bishop away so we could play rook e8, then moved his rook away so it's not defending e8. So Robatsch played queen takes d5. God damn. The truth hurts. And black resigned because the rook on a8 is hanging with check. That game just ended immediately, but black's position was always bad because white kept attacking and attacking and attacking, and black couldn't defend. Even though some pieces were traded, white's king was really safe and black's king was not. And that game was played 5 years before Robatsch died at the age of 7. So Robatsch was 65 when he played this game. And he was just attacking and making tactical threats. And he was playing somebody who was in his prime. Hertneck was probably like 27, 28 when this was played. So when a 65-year-old starts sacking his queen and checkmating you, the truth hurts. And that's why Mepek's never heard of Hertneck. There you go. The only guy I've played of these, yeah. Okay, and last but not least, we have all those great tactical games. Now we have a positional game. This is against Rene Letelier. And I know Letelier because he has a famous game with Fischer in Fischer's 60 Memorable Games where Fischer sacks his queen at the end. And Letelier, if he takes the queen, he loses. If he doesn't take the queen, he loses, so he resigned. That's the Letelier game that I know. This is Robatsch's white again and played e4. Now, if you're paying attention, I'm not saying you're paying attention. If you're paying attention, you may have noticed in the 4 white games, Robatsch played c4, e4, knight f3. He didn't care. He was grandmaster strength. He played whatever he wanted to play. And that's actually common today, but it wasn't common then. Usually you knew what your opponent was going to do in the opening. Robatsch did what he wanted. Okay, Sicilian. And he played the accelerated dragon. This game could be played today. Okay, theoretical line. Played f3. You can also play bishop e2. They're both played. Queen d2. Trade. I've probably had black in this position because I used to play accelerated dragon a lot. b3 because his c-pawn's attacked. Usually black's playing knight d7 pretty early here, trying to trade the dark squared bishops, and white usually doesn't do it because that's a nice bishop and the white squared bishop is behind all these pawns. It's pandemonium. So black usually plays knight d7, puts the knight on c5, etc. But he played a6. He wants to play b5, which would be a pawn sacrifice. So he has to do it when the timing is right. Doesn't look right here. Castles, queen a5. So black's moves are all typical accelerated dragon moves. I wouldn't complain about black's play. Queen b2. I must admit, I've never seen queen b2 because normally black plays knight d7 early and white plays bishop e3. So there ain't no queen b2. We're not putting our queen on the line with that dark bishop. But now that the bishops are still there, now queen b2 makes a lot of sense because we're going to have a battery. So I like queen b2. Now the knight's not pinned. We can move our knight wherever we want. So queen b2, I like that. He can play b4 later. I think the queen's good on b2. I think it's a really nice move. And here, usually, white is trying to win positionally by having more space and the more active pieces. And it's difficult for black to make a move that does anything of note. Usually, black waits for white to overextend, to do something wrong, or black trades all the pieces and tries to draw. So Robatsch taking his time, building his position, lines up his queen and bishop, unpins his knight. Excellent play. Rook e8, showing he doesn't really know what to do. Like, he moved his rook. He's like, what are you going to do? King h1, getting his king off the diagonal. That's a good idea. Queen h5, pretending to attack the white king, but there's no black pieces over there. So Rook e1, Bishop h6. Maybe he wants to play bishop f4. Bishop h6 is a real big positional mistake. f4, stopping bishop f4 and attacking the queen by discovery. So we have to save our queen. He played bishop g4. Now we take the knight on f6. And black has relinquished all control of d5. There was a bishop on e6. There was a knight on f6. And they're gone. Just like in the last game, when black had a bishop on e7 and a rook on h8, stopping rook e8 mate, then they were gone. Okay, and I don't know what Kaiser Soze would say about that, but they're gone. Just like that. Okay, so he takes the bishop, takes with the rook, takes the bishop, and then f5. Now he could play knight to d5. That also looks good, but he plays f5, keep making sure he can get his rook into the game later. Probably knight d5, it threatens to win a pawn, but the problem is the queen is defending the rook, so I can play bishop g7. You can't take this pawn, though you'd like to, because your rook is hanging. And black would like to play f5 next move. Then black's position looks normal. So Robatsch is like, no, you're not going to play f5. Your pawn's going to be on f6 the rest of the game, and here comes my knight. Rook e5, here comes the knight. Now knight takes f6, check wins the queen, so black has to stop that. Then he doubles rooks, making his rook takes e2 look good. And it looks like the other game where white had doubled rooks and played f5, and he's attacking on the king's side. So tactically, eventually, white's going to win this game, but white's winning strategically because the bishop is terrible, the pawn structure is terrible, the d6 pawn is weak, the knight on d5 is unassailable. The knight on d5 is amazing. Okay, he took on f5, another positional mistake. And he's making positional mistakes because of tactics. If you let me take on g6, then I can take on f6 with my rook or my knight, and I can crash through on the king's side. So he's going here trying to trade all the pieces off. If you trade all the pieces off, you don't get checkmated. You lose a long endgame. There you go. Okay, so he took, and now he played a Zwischenzug after rook takes f5. Now the reason he played a Zwischenzug is he can pronounce it correctly because he's Austrian. I can't play them because my pronunciation's terrible. So I play intermezzos. Unless I'm in Italy, then they don't like my pronunciation, so then I play Zwischenzug. And he played knight e7 check. He wants to play knight f5, not rook f5. His knight will be on f5. Black has the worst pawn structure ever, and now white's going to do a rook lift and get his queen somewhere, and black can't do anything. And if I was a strong player, and I used to be a strong player, if I was playing a tournament game, slow game, I would actually be embarrassed if I was black. Like if you hang your queen, you didn't see pawn takes queen. But this looks like you don't know how to play chess. Like the guy's just outplaying you and your position looks silly. So I don't want to lose like this. I want to lose because I missed a tactic. I don't want to lose because I'm no good and the guy just runs me over and my game looks ridiculous. That's not how I want to lose. I want to lose because I played really well, the engine said I'm a good player, and then I missed a tactic and time trouble. That's how I want to lose. This guy's losing because he's getting beat up. Not tactically, strategically beat up. Okay, queen g4, threatening the e-pawn, I guess. Queen d2, because he's not really threatening the pawn, because the knight takes d6. Rook d8. Okay, now he's threatening the pawn. Rook f4, you're not threatening the pawn anymore. Queen g5. h4. The queen's almost trapped. Damn. Queen g6. Queen e2. Now the queen is sort of trapped. I think black can't move his queen. I like queen e2. It's what Karpov used to do, and we called it a creeping move. And then Radiohead wrote a song about it. Because queen e2, it's one square from queen to d2, so it's a creeping move, and black can't move. Black can't move anything. Every move is terrible. He's in Wang Chung. Now, white's probably threatening rook g4. And by probably, white is threatening rook g4. Okay, so black played h5. He must have heard me. I speak so loudly that he can hear me back 50 years ago, 60 years ago. That's pretty loud. g4. If you take on g4, I play rook g4, and your bishop on g7 is toast. Bishop h6 attacking the rook. Gh attacking the queen. The queen doesn't have a lot of squares. It has g8 and h7. Terrible. Rook g4. Black should have claimed stalemate and see what the arbiter said. Might have got lucky. Bishop f8. Always play bishop f8. Queen b2. Again. And usually when the guy's doing this, queen e2, g4, h4, knight f5, rook g4, on that side of the board, you don't look at queen b2. You're like, well, wait, what? I thought he was attacking me that way. Now queen takes f6 check is a massive threat. And instead of defending it, he resigned. And the reason he didn't defend it is you can't. Bishop e7, the bishop's hanging. Bishop g7, the bishop's hanging. Queen to any of these squares defending the pawn, the queen is hanging. And if I play queen f6, that's it. So instead of allowing queen f6, he resigned. And I'm serious, if I was black this game, I would feel embarrassed. Because I shouldn't be playing chess with this guy, he's too good. So those are four very strong players that Robatsch beat. If you want to learn more about him, go to the internet, go to chessgames.com. You can see more of his games. He also drew games with world champions Max Euwe and Mikhail Tal. So he wasn't kidding around. He's drawn world champions. He's beaten most of the grandmasters in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And he was the best player in Austria for 30 years. So go Karl Robatsch, and if you like orchids, he's your guy too. He's a man of many trades. But positionally dominated his opponent this game and beat his other opponents tactically. He was a very universal style player. As you see, he played c4, e4, and knight f3 in different games. He didn't just stick to one thing and play one way. He played a universal style, and he always tried to gain space and play aggressively. Wasn't a passive player. So I want to once again thank Martin Xanthos for sponsoring the lecture. I hope you guys learned about Robatsch, and you can learn more about him by going to the internet and doing some of your own research. He was a very strong player, and he was a strong player for 35 years. It wasn't like played for 4 years and quit. Okay, it wasn't like Morphy. Morphy was good for a few years, and he's like, I'm a lawyer. Okay, Robatsch was good forever, represented Austria in the Olympiad 1 million times, and was a great player and a great botanist. Thanks for sponsoring the lecture. Thanks for watching. If you want to sponsor a lecture, then email Karen at atlchessclub.com, and she will hook you up once you hook us up. Bye, everybody.